What's up, everybody? This is HBT, Harry Bernard Taylor, with the Straight Up Wrestling Show. And I'm coming on here live tonight, burning the midnight oil. So, man, pretty much, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about today's wrestling fan, the hope and dreams of today's wrestling fan, man. As far as wrestling, tonight, earlier tonight, well, I guess you could say yesterday, because we are into a new day. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about like I said, I'm talking about the hope and dreams of today's wrestling fan. Now, Chris and I, we did watch Rampage together earlier today. We didn't get to watch SmackDown a few hours back. We didn't get to watch that together. Chris came in on the tail end of that, and we caught Rampage together, which, in our opinion, Rampage really wasn't as exciting as it could be. I mean, with the talent and all that Tony Khan has, I mean, we're all out here hoping for a better show. And as far as SmackDown, pretty good show, man. Which could have been better. Could have been better too. But basically, I'm gonna talk a little bit about my experience since we have started this podcast. Since Chris and I started the podcast, my experience within the last, I say, 16 months since I've really gotten back into wrestling, which I was a huge wrestling fan for, like, I would say 20 something years. Let me see, probably the first 20, the first 20 something years of my life. I thought I had started watching it when I was around 6 years old. I started watching in the early 70s, and I watched it all the way up until like 99, 2000. So I watched it for like probably religiously for like, man, the first 20 something years of my, 20 something odd years of my life. Let me see. Say maybe the first 27 of my first 27 years of my life, I was very dedicated to the sport, looking at a lot of wrestling. So I watched a lot of wrestling back in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s up to the early 2000s. And that's pretty much, I kind of let it go, and, and was watching from afar. I was, basically what you can call a casual fan. I was one of these guys, man, that would come in every now and then, that would check out the sport, keep in touch with what was going on. But I let it go for a long time, down back into the sport. And me and Chris, Chris has stayed into it. I mean, Chris never have let it go. And Chris and I, we decided to get together once we started going to these indie shows, and we started doing the big time shows. What's up, my man Elijah Washington joining me tonight, man? So what's up, Elijah? But yes, so we both decided to start doing these things together. I said, let's go ahead and do a podcast. Now, Chris, over the last 20 years, he have stayed close to the product, and he just got pretty much disenchanted with it in like the last few years. He started going on some podcasts that was just basically dogging out the WWE once AEW came along. And I said, and what I was seeing, because Chris, anytime WWE would come, Chris would just go out there, man. He would buy me a ticket and want me to come along because I used to be a huge wrestling fan. But I never was a fan of WWE wrestling, WWF. I did follow it because I liked a lot of the wrestlers that was on there over the years. I did follow it, but I never got into Vince McMahon's style of wrestling. I loved his father. When his father had it, I used to watch it on USA Today, and I used to watch it on USA Network. I used to watch it, and I used to remember reading about it all the time in the wrestling books and everything. And my friends and things, my cousins and all them who was living up north was sending the tapes down of old WWE programming, which was the WWF and the WWF programming. So I did see a lot of things with Bruno Sammartino back in the day, Superstar Billy Graham, Bob Backlund, and people like that. So, I used to get the wrestling books and see a lot of old tapes and things of these guys. So I knew about it. So I did like the product, and I knew a lot of stuff about the AWA and what was going on over there. But, basically, man, what we have in wrestling today, you have a lot of fans out here who have a lot of hopes and dreams about what they want to see in wrestling, and they want to see good storylines. And most of the wrestling fans now, if you look at someone in Chris's, because I mean, I'm older than Chris. I'm 10 years older than Chris. I'm in my 50s. I'm in my mid 50s. Chris in his mid 40s. So, Chris, most wrestling fans that I talked to today, and we go to a lot of indie shows, and most of these promoters and most of these wrestlers out here, well, a lot of these wrestlers are younger than their 40s, but a lot of the promoters out here, they are in their 40s, man. They are Chris's age. They're right on that age. So they started watching a lot of wrestling in the, mid 80s, some of them early 80s and things like that is when he became a real good big time wrestling fan, 80s, 90s or whatever. So they missed like the 70s or the early 80s and things like that. So they were just coming in on that golden era of wrestling. So when I look at Chris, I mean, Chris sees a lot. He sees some things a little different than I do when it comes to wrestling. But he pretty much sees a lot of things the same way. I saw the glory days of the territories. So, I went through that as far as in the 70s, man. And when cable TV came on, I saw when cable TV became a major force in the United States, and it took us all around the country to see different wrestling organizations, which we couldn't see when I was growing up. When I was little, when I first started watching wrestling, there's only one wrestling channel, and and they used to show Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling. Me being from the Carolinas, we got Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling, and that was Jim Crockett Promotions. And he had a show called Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling. In 1977, I was 10 years old. There was a show came along called Georgia Championship Wrestling. Well, we got Georgia Championship Wrestling here in the Carolinas. So I got to see Georgia Championship Wrestling, and that was on the cables. That was on a big super station that Ted Turner had bought, and he kept wrestling on there because wrestling was a low-cost product, and he can get it out to people, and he put that on there. So they really, and that thing went national. So we had Georgia Championship Wrestling, and he will put Florida Championship Wrestling on the super station too. So we saw that. So I got to see. So I was watching like three different programs back in the 70s. You had Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling, you had Georgia Championship Wrestling, and you had Florida Championship Wrestling, which was great. And then, man, you get into like the late 70s, early 80s. Then we started getting things like Continental Wrestling Association out of Tennessee, and Southwest Championship Wrestling out of Texas. So we was getting wrestling from a lot of different areas. So I had like 5 different places to see wrestling, and that's not including getting wrestling tapes from up north and things like that, and some out on the Midwest from friends and cousins and things like that. So I got to see a lot of good wrestling, and wrestling back then, man, it was so it had a lot of people in it who had a lot of ideas, who really knew how to drag out and write good storylines. Wrestling just was a lot different, man. I'm not trying to say that nobody out here could do it today. It's just that it seemed like there's a lack of imagination out there now, and we're not getting the stories. And I remember back then we didn't come into our wrestling programs. Nobody was asking, I hope they got a good storyline. I mean, because like I said, kayfabe was alive, definitely. But when we went into seeing wrestling, or when we went to see a wrestling show, or there was wrestling come on every week, and there was new wrestling come in, we didn't worry about the storyline or whatever that went with these wrestlers. It just seemed like they just pretty much moved into one. They moved into one, and they moved into a smooth. It was like a smooth transition. You have a new guy coming to the territory. Next thing you know, he's up in a storyline against somebody, man. He's in a feud, and those feuds always made sense for some reason. But you got wrestling fans today. What you have today, you got people in their 40s and 50s who saw that in their 60s, and some people in their 60s and things like that are still watching wrestling. Not all of it is lost. Not all of us have stopped watching wrestling. You still have some that's still watching wrestling. They're going out to these indie shows, and some of them are still watching WWE and WWF, and they got hopes and dreams that it can turn back into something what it was before. Never going to turn out to be in that studio type wrestling deal that it was before. But man, as far as wrestling as a whole, the product has to look like a wrestling product. What we got now, we got a bunch of flippity floppity, people flying over the top ropes, guys catching each other and doing all kind of things. It doesn't even look like wrestling. It doesn't resemble wrestling all the time. And when it does resemble wrestling, we don't get a finish. We don't get a finish. I want to see people like Bryan Danielson, who's a very good wrestler, even Jon Moxley, MJF. I want to see these guys, I want to see finishes. I don't want to see, these guys being attacked all the time in the ring. Seth Rollins is a good wrestler, but I mean, Seth Rollins seems like he gets into attacking people too, or he gets attacked. Riddle is a very good wrestler, but we don't get to see a lot of these guys finish their matches. Bobby Lashley, very good competitor. I want to see these guys finish their matches. What's wrong with going back to the days where men used to fight one-on-one, or there was tag team wrestling where you saw 4 competitors go at it one-on-one and then they leave the arena and somebody is declared a winner. That's what I want to see, man. We did have attacks back in the day. You had plenty of attacks. You had things like that happened, but when it happened, it was very rare. So it was very exciting because it was a rare occurrence that somebody walking up the ramps and then next thing you know, somebody jump out there and attack them. That's what made the 4 Horsemen so great. I mean, the 4 Horsemen didn't attack somebody every flipping week, but every now and then, I mean, you knew somebody was around. Every week you knew somebody was around and something could happen. That's that pretty much was the start of it. But they didn't attack people every week. So we have lost a huge element of surprise in the business. Now somebody coming out to attack. A lot of times you hear this music. 98% of the time you hear the music coming out. So there's no surprise in that, man. It's just flat out crazy. So what you got is a lot of chaos. I mean, the last, me and Chris, we've been doing this since late June, it was last July, since we started this. And all I've seen, man, is a bunch of chaos. And I tell you what, I've gotten my feel back for wrestling. I'm at a C+ level fan. I'm a huge fan that's going to watch it every week. I'm not the biggest fan that I was before at the A+ level, but I'm at that C+ level. I'm more than a casual fan, but I'm just a fan. And and so every week, man, I'm looking at what are they gonna do. But I love entertaining the fans. I love getting out here doing podcasts, going to the shows, talking to different wrestlers and things, and getting out here and getting on commentary, doing those things. Love doing it. Love being a part of it because I always wanted to be a part of it. Always wanted to do it. When I was growing up, man, used to always jot down, booking matches and doing things like that. So I always been involved in it. But man, my enthusiasm for wrestling is from what I grew up with, what used to go on. And I'm looking for that now. And the casual fans, the fans that when Tony Khan came in this game, Tony Khan said he wanted that wrestling fan. He wanted those WCW fans who don't walk away from wrestling. He wanted those WWE fans who grew up during the Attitude Era and loved it so much that don't walk away. Those are the fans that he wants. But he can't grab them. He can't grab them, and it looked like he was on the way to doing that for a while. But now, man, he has no clue, and he's in desperation mode, and he's trying to keep up with Triple H. And the whole thing about Triple H, he finally took over from Vince, and then he comes in, and you see he has some ideas, but it looks like it's maybe he's abandoning some of these ideas, so he can pretty much look like he's trying to keep up with the Joneses when he's in the league. Man, continue doing what you're doing. You was putting on great matches and everything, and bring in people. Don't worry about what Tony Khan doing because Tony Khan is no threat. But I think he wants to destroy Tony Khan, so he's taking his eyes off the prize, man, and could be slipping a little bit right there. But man, it's the way I look at it is you got a lot of wrestling fans out here. They are living on hopes and dreams. So that's what I'm talking about. Hopes and dreams of today's wrestling fans. They hoping and dreaming that they see the glory years, man. Bring back those wrestlers from back yesterday. Bring back some of that wrestling. Bring back that joy that we had, that we could take our wrestling, man. We took our wrestling from our homes. We took it into the schools, man, and talked about wrestling. We took our wrestling from our homes. We took it into our jobs and talked about wrestling. And we took it from, anywhere, man, any sporting event. We took it from our homes and went to a football game and we talked about wrestling. We went to a basketball game, talked about wrestling. We took it from our homes, went into barbershops and talked about wrestling. That's what we used to do. You know, it people could be talking about another sport, and uh and you could just bring up wrestling, and people they're turning there, start talking to you about wrestling. I mean, there was times, man, plenty of times. There's plenty of guys, man. They would come in when when I was out here and managing and or just being a worker in certain businesses and things, and I started talking to somebody, had to train somebody, start asking them, about sports, what teams do you like and things like that. And there was certain guys, man, there was certain people. They were like, I really don't, really don't care about a lot of sports. Only thing they cared about was wrestling. They'd be like, I'll tell you what I do like. And I say, what? Wrestling, man. And I'd be like, I like wrestling. Start talking to them about wrestling, ask them who their favorite wrestler is. Start talking to them about wrestling, the big old grin come over their face. So, you had those guys like that. And Chris was one of those guys, man, hardcore wrestling fan. But Chris is a hardcore football fan and a lot of other things. But there are wrestling fans. Me and Chris used to hang out with certain guys. That's all they did was watch wrestling. That's all they talked about was wrestling. We had a friend named Earl. We called him Dre. His nickname was Dre. Dre, all he did was watch wrestling. He didn't care nothing about football, or unless he was playing it on Madden or playing NCAA football and things like that. And then we had another friend named Rod Nico. That's all he cared about was wrestling. He didn't care about any other sport. Samson the same way. But a lot of these guys backed away when Attitude Era died, when the NWO died, when WCW died. But DSK, appreciate you joining, man. There's more wrestling on TV than ever before. Hard to keep interest. There's no doubt, especially when they have the minute by minute rating breakdowns. Yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that, DSK. I have a thing I see on like Sundays. I think they're showing WOW or something like that. Women of Wrestling. I've been recording that. I've been recording that because I want to go back and look at it. I seen some interesting matches on there, man. But I really haven't had the time to really look at it. But I've been recording those shows since they done started coming on TV. So I'm gonna start checking those out, man. And I think I'm gonna go back and start checking out some of this NWA Power or maybe Impact or whatever. But there is a lot of wrestling on TV. And one problem with that is you have, and I've seen this not just in AEW and WWE, you have a lot of wrestling promotions, man, and even on the indie scene, they trying to make everybody a star. Every single body at one point, man, was coming out getting on the mic. I remember that was happening in WWE, especially, man, last summer. Everybody that came out there was getting on the mic. You had all these factions, and they putting out everybody's name. I'm sorry. Back in the day, man, I didn't want to hear Mike Jackson on the mic. Mike Jackson was a jobber. I didn't want to hear him. I didn't want to hear Rocky King on the mic. I didn't want to hear Chick Donovan. I didn't want to listen to those people. People that on the mic, I wanted to hear Sting, Dusty Rhodes, Junkyard Dog, Butch Reed. Those are the type of people I wanted to listen to. Ernie Ladd, Ric Flair. Those was the stars, man. Blackjack Mulligan. I wanted to hear those guys. Tully Blanchard. I didn't want to hear. I didn't want to hear the Brooklyn Brawler, Steve. I didn't want to hear him talking on the microphone, man. Get out there and do what you do. Wrestle, put up a good match. You're gonna most likely you're gonna lose. 98, 99% of the time you're gonna lose. Go back to the dressing room and you get your fame that way. I didn't want to hear you on the microphone, but for some reason we had an influx. We got an influx of talent where they trying to make everybody a star and putting everybody on the mic. It seemed like these wrestling promoters or these wrestling promotions are saying, let's just stick everybody out there. Let's put everybody out there and let them hit a promo and let's see what sticks. And man, it doesn't work like that. Everybody can't be a star, and that's in every single sport out there. And I mean, I know this is sports entertainment, but that's the way we used to look at it, man. A sport. DSK. Just a second, man. Let me go on here. Let me see if I can get you guys here on get you guys here and start talking to you on this thing right here. DSK, I have a theory. The Attitude Era was good for ratings, but those memories of raunchy shows kept parents, from letting kids watch these days. So the audience is a lot older. There's no doubt about that. The Attitude Era, I tell you, man, that thing was that was just flat out crazy. That is something, man, that that's one of the reasons I pretty much stopped watching. And it's not that, I didn't care about seeing sexy women or whatever, things being raunchy or whatever. I was a man. I was a young man at the time, like 30, 31 around that time. So yeah, of course, I love those girls, man. Trish Stratus, Tori Wilson, and Stacy Keebler, and all those. And there was other girls that was even more raunchier than they were. Of course, I didn't mind them coming out there doing all that stuff, but that combined with back then, man, they was hitting the women. The women would get slapped and all kind of different things like that, and it just turned me off. And I knew it's not that it was just it got to me. I knew how it would affect the wrestling crowd. It would affect the wrestling crowd, and you had these parents out there who had small kids who's used to taking their small kids to wrestling. Oh, I'm gonna stop going to this junk. And as their kids grew up, they kept them away from it too. And so you have a lot of these parents, man, that I've talked to that's in their 40s and stuff, man. I used to watch it when the Attitude Era or when WCW was around, but I can't stand it now. And don't even give it a chance. And me and Chris, we convinced a lot of fans, man, to start coming out. Fans and people that we knew who used to like wrestling. We convinced a lot of people to start going to these indie shows. And it was going to the indie shows, but the difference with the thing with the indie shows, you can take them to a good indie show, and these guys will get pumped up because there's a lot of indie shows. And they would go to another indie show that was close to the area. Me and Chris, we warned them, man, don't go to that show. Don't go to that show. They go to the show and then they hate it and they don't want to go to another show because they think it's going to be, going to be like that, that show they just watched. They forget that they went to a good indie show. And so that right there is a problem. But the whole thing about it is we got a lot of people to watch AEW because AEW was doing good things. They putting on great matches, and people saying AEW reminds them of WCW. People thought it was awesome and all that. But then Tony Khan just started, putting on bad shows, man. And then people start saying, hey, man, I feel embarrassed to watch. Stop watching. So, we had a lot of friends who stopped watching. So, man, it is a stone cold battle. And I know a lot of people out here who have their hopes and dreams that, hey, I can turn on the TV. Like one of our sponsors, man. Let me go and give a word out for one of our sponsors, man. But one of our sponsors out here, Happy Trails Auto Sales, man. Go to happytrailsauto.com if you need a new car. Man, happytrailsauto.com, and Happy Trails Auto is on Wesley Road, 10 Wesley Road, Taylor, South Carolina. We give that shout out to him. Go out there and see my man John Greer here hook you up with a good car, man, a good used car. If you need one, go out there and check him out. But yeah, it's a lot of wrestling out here, DSK. And man, AEW, they had something really good. But AEW, he made a mistake. He started bringing in nothing but a whole bunch of WWE talent. And, he lost focus. And it messed up the locker room, bringing in all that talent. He was focusing. The thing about Tony Khan is this is the mistake he was making. He focused on getting bigger, focused on getting bigger instead of getting better. You always focus on anything, any kind of business. Always focus on better before bigger. Focus on better before bigger in anything that you do. And that's what I tell everybody, and that's just from being in business for a long time in my life. My mom owning a construction company for 42 years, so it just, you always tell people focus on getting better before bigger. We have a friend who just now bought indie promotion here in the Carolinas, and man, he's looking to get on TV and everything. He wants to go down to Spectrum, Charter, and get back on TV. They was on TV before, and they run every week. And he's bringing in this different talent and all that, and they paying them big, more money and all that. I'm like, man, you jumping the gun. Use what you have. Use the talent that you have, and try to build your audience from there, because they lost a lot of people. I say you got to get better before you get bigger, because you go out there and try to get bigger, you like say, you're just gonna pour a lot of resources into something, and then it might not work out because you lose focus on what you had, the small things that you had. So learn to take care of that before you take care of the big things. But let me go ahead and answer my man DSK again. I see that you got something else, man. Yeah, TK was doing his own thing. It was good. Then he hired so many WWE guys that changed the entire show for the worse. Yes, he did. Yes, he did, man. DSK. Don't make no sense, man. It don't make no sense. That just okay, cool. But yeah, that was just tragic, and I saw it coming. And you know, I tried to tell Chris that. I mean, me and Chris, if you, I mean, you can go way back in some of our shows. Chris was so gung ho. Him, a lot of our friends, man, Hill Carmichael, Michael King, who used to be one of the guys who started this show with us. Used to be three of us. You know, they were so big on AEW, and you know, they used to argue up and down with me that AEW had more talent than WWE. I'm like, no, they don't. I told them that all the people that Tony had released, I said he really haven't released anybody. These guys that he released really wasn't nothing. They really didn't bring a whole bunch of value to WWE. And so he pretty much was drowning. He drowned them out, man. He drowned AEW out. They signed all these people, and all it did, it became toxic. It became toxic for Tony Khan and AEW. It ruined everything. It ruined it. And you know, after the media scrum, they ended up getting they had like 4 or 5 weeks straight where they got over 1 million people because people was tuning in just to see what was happening. But that's the only reason, man, that people was tuning in to see what was happening. It's not great wrestling that was bringing them there, not great storylines, and that's what people want. People want storylines. People are begging for storylines. People, you know, that's what people want. They want storylines. They want good wrestling, and they want the wrestlers in there that make sense. They want AEW to look like AEW. They don't want it to look like WWE. And all these WWE people, what happened to them? Most of them got disenchanted with what's going on. They didn't like the direction their career is going. All of them jetting out of there as soon as possible. And the ones that's still there, they came from the WWE. They want to get out of their contract. They want to go. I mean, I haven't heard that from Bryan Danielson, somebody like that, you know, and Jon Moxley like to stay there because Jon Moxley, he likes it because Tony Khan was letting him do his mud shows and all those things like that he likes to go out and do. You know, go out there and work those, with GCW and things like that with the, you know, and jump on tax and all that. That's what Dean Ambrose likes to do. Jon Moxley, that's what he likes to do. But Tony Khan, that's why Tony Khan went ahead and got him in his latest contract that he won't do anything like that. That he has him exclusive for his shows. That so Jon Moxley can't go out there and do all that foolishness. But man, so yeah, I'm just gonna go back in the old days, man, and talk about when I first started watching wrestling, man. You know, I remember the first guys that I remember, George and Sandy Scott. A guy named Brute Bernard, used to love him. Well, I didn't love him. He was scary, man, to tell you the truth. Rip Hawk and Ric Flair. Ric Flair was a rookie. I mean, well, wasn't a rookie. He had been in the game for like 2 years. But the first time 1 or 2 years, the first time I seen him was like in 73, 74. And he was in the NWA, and he was with Rip Hawk. And he was just a big, burly guy, man. But I thought they was a great team. I used to like Rip Hawk because of the bandana he used to wear and everything. And Ric Flair used to have on those shades, man. I thought he was a cool dude, but he was just a big dude. And then next thing you know, in 1975, he had that plane crash. He come back, he had lost weight. And, next thing you know, he's doing the Ric Flair. George Scott, who had became the booker over there in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, had changed his gimmick, gave him the gimmick of the Nature Boy Ric Flair, gave him the Nature Boy gimmick, which came from Buddy Rogers, which I didn't know anything about Buddy Rogers at the time. I was 8 years old, man, so I had no clue. But, Ric Flair, and the first time I seen him, man, I'm like, wow, man, this guy is great. He's outstanding. But, man, you talking about somebody who had so much heat on him. I went to see him at Greenville Memorial Auditorium with my family. We used to go every Monday night. That's when the regional promotions, Mid-Atlantic, like I say, it was in the Carolina, so they would go to Greenville on Monday nights. On Tuesday nights, they would be in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Wednesday nights, they would be in Greenwood Civic Center. Thursday nights, they would be in Columbia, South Carolina. On Friday nights, they will wrestle in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then on Saturday nights, they'll be in Greensboro, North Carolina. That was their hotbeds. And then they I think on Sunday or whatever, they went to Richmond, Virginia, and so they had some Virginia. They went to Virginia. They went to Raleigh, North Carolina. So they had a couple places in Virginia. So I used to watch those guys all the time, man. But the first feud I saw, and it was the hardest hitting feud I ever seen, man. Johnny Valentine and Chief Wahoo McDaniel. And you talking about a feud, man. You talking about hard hitting. Think of Sheamus versus I'm not gonna say Ilya Dragunov. Sheamus versus Gunther versus Walter. Gunther, we know him as Walter, know him as Gunther too. Think of that match. That's how hard hitting that feud was, man. It went on for like a year and something before. Like I said, Johnny Valentine, he was in that crash with Ric Flair too. But man, those guys really, really are the ones who really built up the promotion in Jim Crockett Promotions. And then, like I said, the thing with Ric Flair in 1976, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. What he didn't call himself the Dragon back then, it was just Ricky Steamboat. Rick Steamboat was a big muscle guy, man. And those two guys, but he could wrestle his tail off and fly around the ring. And Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair just had a feud, and those guys went at it hard hitting. And then Ric Flair's cousins, man, K-Fab cousins, the Anderson brothers, man, the toughest tag team in the world, man. They was just devastating, dominating people. And then you had Blackjack Mulligan, who was the guy who helped build Ric Flair in Barry Windham's dad. Great wrestler. So, it was people like that, man, that really got me involved in the sport, really loving the sport. And then around 1978, you had a guy come in named Roddy Piper that, came into the area. That was just dynamic on the mic, young guy, got up there playing bagpipes. A lot of people picking on him because he had on his skirt. And, guys back then, they looked at that skirt. Hey, this guy's wearing a dress because you just didn't see men dressed like that. And they say, it's a Scottish heritage. So, I go back and I'm looking at this encyclopedia just to see that thing because, we didn't have the TV, we didn't have the internet and all that, so we couldn't really look at that. So I go and find this thing on those encyclopedias, which used to be our internet back in the day, and found out that's what that was, man. He's playing these bagpipes, cool as I don't know what. But Roddy Piper, man, one of the guys that came out there, made me love the sport. Angelo Moscow, Greg Valentine, then Ricky Steamboat, Jay Youngblood, Jack and Jerry Briscoe, Dusty Rhodes, so many different guys. The Fabulous Freebirds, then Junkyard Dog come into the area in Georgia Championship Wrestling. Mr. Wrestling, Tony Atlas. Mr. USA, Tony Atlas. It was just so many different guys. Mr. Wrestling 1 and 2. Ted DiBiase back when he was a face, man. Back, when he was in Memphis and, over into the Mid-Atlantic Championship area, went into Georgia. Awesome competitor. Vern Gagne up in AWA, Bob Backlund, man, those type of guys, Superstar Billy Graham in the WWF, those guys, man, that just the big cat Ernie Ladd, those guys really, man, made wrestling so joyous, and their names just so synonymous with wrestling today, man. We're looking at these guys now and say, hey, in 20 years, are these guys going to be talked about? Is people going to be talking about the Young Bucks like they talking about these guys today? I don't know. Is people going to talk about Orange Cassidy like they talk about Sting? Or are they going to talk about Wardlow like they talk about Lex Luger? I don't think so. I just don't think so. And Lex Luger wasn't the greatest wrestler in the world. So, but man, I think the last legends that you've seen in wrestling was Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. And I guess you could say John Cena to a certain point. But those are the last guys, man, that really elevated themselves to where, the casual fans connected with them. People that don't usually watch wrestling, that would tune in if those guys was wrestling. That was the last of the Mohicans, man. That was the last of it. And because CM Punk definitely didn't do that. He definitely didn't do that. CM Punk was wrestling famous. Excuse me. He was the last huge wrestler. He was wrestling famous. Now we got Roman Reigns. But Roman Reigns is he's wrestling famous. He's not one of these famous wrestlers, man, that someone, he can hit the TV and people are, hey, I'm gonna tune into that SummerSlam because I want to see Roman Reigns. I'm gonna tune into that Crown Jewel because I want to see Roman Reigns. That's not happening. MJF got he's right now he got a huge opportunity for him and a huge opportunity for Roman Reigns, but Roman Reigns wants to be part-time, man. He's part-time, but wrestling need him to wrestle all the time. And he needs to start appealing to the outside world, man, to the outside world. He needs to get out of that box in wrestling and bring back, it's people like him. It's going to take a wrestler like him and MJF is pretty much the only two right now that I believe that can have that mega crossover success. Him, MJF, I would say FTR because of their wrestling. Some guys can do it because of their wrestling. But Roman Reigns because of his personality, and he had to, and it took a while before he got a personality. And MJF because of his personality, the way he talks, he can get over. But there's probably only a few that can actually do that. Cody Rhodes, when he come back, Cody Rhodes is another guy, man. Cody Rhodes, I think, can be a mega superstar in this business if they use him right and try to persuade him, man, to stick to wrestling and not go into Hollywood or something like that, because he likes those cameras, man. He likes those cameras, and I think he likes being involved. DSK said nowadays when someone crosses over, they leave. There's no doubt about that, DSK. And that's what I just now touched on, man. Will Cody Rhodes do that? Roman Reigns look like he's going to do that. Will MJF do that? That's what people do in wrestling, man. In football, guys, they leave early, man. They retire early. A lot of money into it. Basketball, some guys stick around, some don't. So, DSK, you're right about that, man. But yeah, man, I just, I'm hoping, I have a lot of hope and dreams for wrestling, man. I really do. I want to see it stick around, and I just want to see it get better. I want it to get to the point where nobody's embarrassed to talk about wrestling anymore. Nobody, even though the cat has been let out of the bag and they done spilled all the secrets on wrestling. Wrestling needs to. That's why wrestling. The wrestlers. I think wrestlers are working harder than ever. Even though I think a lot of them, like say, it looked more like a gymnastics. A lot of it looked like a gymnastics competition. But these wrestlers are working even harder than what they was working back in the day. They're putting their bodies on the line, man. They work as hard as they can to entertain these fans. But man, the promoters got to do their jobs. The people that own these companies. And, back in the day, you had a lot of companies, man. It was the companies that built these wrestlers. It wasn't just the wrestlers, man. And, you have these, you got promoters out there. They like, oh, can he put 15 people in the seat? Oh, can he put 5 people in the seat, 7 people in the seat? Can I get my money back? Back in the day, you came into the Mid-Atlantic area, Jim Crockett, he used to try to figure out what could he do with you? How could he make money off of you? Vince McMahon had the same thing. How can we make you, a star? Or you look like a star or whatever. They used to look at your talent and put you out there and build storylines around you. And they made you. Now they want these wrestlers to make the company. But, the problem with that, I can understand you want wrestlers to draw. You want wrestlers to be able to draw money for your company. But the whole thing about it is you got to give them some help. You can't just throw them out there, man, like termites. Throw them out there, throw them into a fresh fish into a pool of piranha. If you do, they're gonna get swallowed up, and that's what happens. Everybody out there for themselves, and you got these wrestlers out there just wandering around. And man, and to tell you the truth, these wrestlers, they in the same boat. A lot of these wrestlers, they got the same hopes and dreams that these wrestling fans have. They want to see wrestling great too. But I see a lot of wrestlers, I see a lot of promoters, man, that they have no clue. They have no clue. They think they do. They think they do. And I know they're going to come back, and a lot of people like, these podcasters, they think they know everything. No, we don't. I don't know, a lot of things I don't know. But I mean, I can read a crowd. I can read a crowd. I promoted plenty of things before. I promoted music. I promoted in the music world. So I was a DJ for a long time, and I promoted, like I said, promoted concerts. So man, I know how to read a crowd. I know when people get interested in something. And man, they wrestling is losing it fast. And if Tony Khan goes down, we back to square one, man. WWE has no competition. And when you don't have no competition, it's not good for any business not to have any competition, because you're not going to stay on your toes. And you're going to have WWE back competing with themselves, man. Because NXT, SmackDown, that was all that stuff was they put all that stuff together to compete with themselves. They have something else, man. They have another brand. So, I mean, we don't want that. So we want WWE to succeed. Want to see Tony Khan get this thing over. But who are the wrestlers, man, that can get it over there in that over there in AEW. Man. But hey, appreciate DSK, Elijah, appreciate you guys joining, and everybody else, man. I know there's some other people out here who's joined the podcast. But man, if you're on Facebook, hit that like, share, join. If you're on YouTube, hit that like, share, join, hit that notification bell so you know when coming on, man. I just came on tonight. You didn't know that, but you get that ding, ding, ding when we're coming on, man. If you're on Twitter, hit that like, share, tweet, and retweet. And if you're on Twitch, man, do the same thing you do on that you do on Twitter, man. I mean that you do on YouTube. If you're on Twitch, do the same thing that you do. But I'm getting tired myself, so I'll be going off to bed in just a little bit, man. But definitely, if you're on YouTube, you coming in, definitely hit that like and do that same thing on Facebook, man. Yeah, I'm looking for wrestling, man. I want wrestling back to the glory days, man. I want my Steiner brothers. I want the Steiner brothers. I want Doom. I want Harlem Heat. I want back in the days, Rick Martel, Tito Santana. I want the Bret Harts, man. I want the Hulk Hogan's. I mean, those are the type, that's what I want. I want that kind of excitement back in wrestling, and I don't want one faction coming in and just taking the whole thing over like NWO. That was awful, man. That was awful, and it was pitiful to see wrestling succumb to that, and it pretty much ruined the whole company. I know a lot of people out here, maybe see this and say, okay, hey, it was the TNT is X, TBS is X. They didn't like wrestling. People want to use that excuse and stuff like that. It wasn't Bischoff's fault. It wasn't Vince Russo's fault. It wasn't nobody's fault. It was the TBS executives. No, it was not, man. No. They was having all kind of problems, so those people had to step in, man. They was having all kind of problems. And anytime a company have a problem like that and they spending too much money, their parent company, they're gonna step in some kind of way. Whether it's TV execs, owners, or whatever. Somebody's going to step in. Somebody has to step in and do something about that. Stop the bleeding. And I mean, Ted Turner wasn't going to do it because Ted Turner, he loved wrestling. That was his wrestling company, man. And he wanted that thing to continue on and on and on. I mean, he never wanted to see that thing end because he had a loyalty to him, man. They was on his station from the get-go. And it was cheap. It was cheap to make, and it got huge ratings. Huge ratings. Some of the biggest ratings he had on the show. So yeah, he had a loyalty thing to him. But man, yeah, my hopes and dreams, man, for 2023 is wrestling start moving in a new direction, moving out of the chaos. Cause hey, to me, this last year and a half, man, has been the chaos era. Chaotic era. I can't remember much of the stuff, man. Can't remember. And we sat there, me and my partner Christopher Burton, the People's Podcaster, has talked and went back to some of AEW's pay-per-views, man, that they had in 2021, 2022, and talked about how great they was. And then I asked him what you remember about them. Do you remember who was in the main event? Do you remember who kicked off the show? Couldn't remember. You can ask Chris on any WrestleMania. You can ask him about any match. Chris will know about it. Chris can tell you about the first match to the last match on mostly every WrestleMania. I could do that on a lot of Starcades, back in the day. I can do that right now. I can do that on a lot of Great American Bashes, things like that. I can remember those matches. I can't remember these matches, man. And, hey, let's just blame it on my age. It could be my age. But a lot of these pay-per-views, man, I can't remember. So it's a sad state of wrestling right now. But man, yeah, I got those hopes and dreams that this year, man, this upcoming year, I have hopes and dreams that wrestling, man, is gonna take a turn. It's gonna take a turn for the better. My man DSK, with so much content, is anything memorable? That's true. That's true, DSK. That's true. And you like say you have so many wrestlers. Those rosters are so big, man. So big. And And that's why I say, when you're trying to make everybody a superstar, you're gonna run into a whole bunch of problems. Whole bunch of problems. So, but yeah, I will be breaking down some things on DSK. I don't know when I'm gonna put it up, but I will be doing another show, and I'm probably gonna do this show with Chris. Most likely, I'm sure I am, as long as Chris is available. But because I'm gonna try to get out as much content as possible, especially on things like this. But I'm gonna break down who should be in Ring of Honor, who should be on Rampage. Like I say, Rampage need to be a separate show, and I mean he needs to do it live. Make that thing separate, or just do a TV taping. Tape it the day before, but don't tape it on after Dynamite. Don't tape it after Dynamite. Dynamite need to be separate. Rampage need to be separate. And Ring of Honor, he needs to talk to TBS. Go ahead and talk to Warner Discovery, and ask to be on. Because they don't just have TBS and TBS and TNT. There's a lot of different ones. He can ask to be on TCM, Turner Classic Movies or whatever. Go ahead and ask to put that product on there, and it'd be like Turner Classic, because Ring of Honor has like a classic wrestling style. Go ahead and go on that, man. It's just a channel down, I think, from TBS or whatever, or go on, and plus, like I say, they have a streaming service. He needs to go on something, put Ring of Honor on something like that, and then Ring of Honor I have his own platform. But man, I'm gonna put certain amount of his wrestlers. I'm gonna put Ring of Honor, Rampage, and Dynamite, and he needs to separate those things, and then bring them together sometime for some of the pay-per-views. And plus, like I say, he need to find a big time streaming channel that's gonna just stream wrestling. That way, he won't have to nickel and dime his customers to death, man. Because that's pretty much what's happening with his pay-per-views. Just nickel and diming people to death, man. And it's just, it gets tiring because like I said, you always opening up that wallet. You always hitting them credit card numbers to to put the shows on. Then you get the free shows if you got Peacock, the premium shows. That's WWE, and better believe they making a profit off that, man. They are making a profit. But yeah, a lot of content, man. I agree with you on that, DSK. Let me see. I'm gonna get one last thing from you. DSK said we get new wrestling almost every day. Yes, and then you have to look at it because you have AEW Dark, you got WWE Main Event, you got all these, you got so many different, so much stuff out there. But the whole thing about it, man, you got to try to stand out from the pack, and you got to figure out, hey, how can I do this to where I can get some storylines going where this is gonna stick out to where you got to be careful and make sure you don't saturate your card to where you're trying to run a whole bunch of different storylines. Get your main ones, because I mean, if you go back in the day, because I look back at some Jim Crockett's he at times had like 120 something people on his rosters. I couldn't believe it because I always thought his roster was like 50, 70, 80 or whatever. He would have like, back in 87, anywhere from 85, 86, 87, 88, 89. He always had between like 100, 120, 170 people on his roster. But we knew what the feuds were. We did. Sting was in feuds. You had your Dusty Rhodes in his feuds. You had your Ric Flairs in his feuds. You had the Jimmy Boogie Woogie Man Valiant in his feuds, always with Paul Jones or Gary Hart's army. You always knew your feuds. You had your Russians, the Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff, and and Nikita and all them. They was in their feuds. The Road Warriors in their feuds. Rock and Roll Express was in the feuds. Midnight Express was in their feuds. But usually a lot of those feuds was together. So you didn't have and then you had your mid carders. You had your Dustin Rhodes. You had your Mike Rotundos. You had you had people that knew their roles. You had your Jimmy Garvins, even your Midnight Express. They wasn't on the caliber of the Steiner brothers, even though they did put them in matches with them every now and then. But you had those guys. They would lose to those guys, and they would run. They would run the mid card. They would be the top mid card guys. Even Cactus Jack. He went up to. I know he went up to WWE and became this big old huge star. But when he was in WCW, he was a big name over there as Cactus Jack. But Cactus Jack was he was a head mid card guy. So and man, they had all that thing worked out smooth. It worked out smooth. So you can do that. I mean, it can be done. It definitely can be done. But you got to have and you got to have a team. WCW had a team. They had a team of writers, man. They had a they had a group. They had a creative team. So you had a lot of people controlling something. I mean, you got to have a head booker. You got to have somebody who's gonna have the final say. You do. Oh, you're gonna get gonna get all clogged up. So it's got to be one booker. But you need somebody behind you to pretty much control everything else, help control. So have a few other guys, man, help control. But I don't know, man. I really don't know. It's just I guess we just gonna have to roll with it and just enjoy the ride, man. Just enjoy the ride. Because I'll tell you one thing. I think if they get away from a lot of the chaotic things and let us see a lot of clean finishes, I don't think we'll be harping too much on the storylines and things like that. Oh, I don't think we'll be getting frustrated, because I think that's what's frustrating people, because they see so much chaos and so many things happening, is that they can't focus on a storyline when there's actually a storyline out there, if that makes sense. Because there have been storylines out there, but I think people have focused so much on what's going on, all the outside antics and all that's going on in wrestling. They haven't had time to they really haven't had the time to really pay attention to the storylines that they have put out there. So that's probably a problem too. But guys, man, I have gotten tired, and it is 1:29 going on 1:30. I appreciate you guys coming in here, hanging out with me. It's been a good night, man. And I will see you guys sometime tomorrow. I'll probably come on and do a show because Chris is going to be gone. Probably come on and do one show by myself. Me and Chris, we will be doing a huge show tomorrow night. So definitely come in, man, because I got something special planned. And we're going to rock that thing out. Me and Chris going to rock it out. We'll be able to talk to you guys the way we want to, man. And later, DSK, man, you have a great night. You and Elijah and everybody else, man. A few other people that joined on Facebook. I appreciate you guys, man. Have a good night. Stay straight up. Peace.